My name is Lucas, and this is the story of how I learned the hard way that sometimes the person you cherish the most can take you for granted until it's too late. Sophie and I met in our early 20s. Back then, we were inseparable. One of those couples people would look at and say, yeah, they're meant for each other. Our love felt effortless. Late-night drives, deep conversations, and just two souls completely lost in each other. When we got married, it felt right. We had big dreams. Traveling, building a future together, and maybe even starting a family someday. And for a while, everything was perfect. But, as life often does, things changed. I was working tirelessly to build my business from the ground up, putting in long hours and making sacrifices. Yet, no matter how busy I was, Sophie was always my priority. I made time for her, whether it was little surprises, spontaneous date nights, or simply sitting down to talk after a long day. I always ensured she knew she mattered. At first, she appreciated it. She was proud of me, supportive, and my biggest cheerleader. But gradually, she started changing. At first, it was subtle, complaining that she wanted more me time, saying she needed to focus on herself. And honestly, I supported that. We all need personal space to grow. But then, it became something else entirely. She started talking about putting herself first. At first, I assumed she meant self-care, exercising, reading, or indulging in activities that brought her happiness. But that's not what she meant. What she really meant was doing whatever she pleased, regardless of how it impacted our marriage. She stopped making an effort. Our plans no longer mattered to her. She barely asked about my day, yet she still expected me to treat her as if she were the most important person in the world. It felt like she wanted all the benefits of marriage without putting in the effort of being a wife. At first, I convinced myself this was just a rough patch. After all, every marriage has ups and downs, right? So, I did what any devoted husband would do. I tried even harder. I avoided conflicts whenever I could. If something upset me, I would first try to discuss it calmly. But if it escalated instead of resolving, I swallowed my frustration instead of arguing. I started showering her with gifts, flowers, perfume, even that expensive handbag she had been eyeing for months. Anything to remind her that I still cared, that I was still here. But none of it made a difference. She would thank me occasionally, but there was no real enthusiasm behind it. No genuine happiness. No appreciation. Just a half-hearted smile before she moved on to something else. Usually her phone. When she said she needed space, that she needed to find herself, I didn't question it at first. I thought, okay, maybe she just needs time to figure things out. So, I gave her the freedom she asked for. I stopped trying to pull her close. I let her go out more, have her nights out, do whatever she felt she needed. But months passed, and nothing changed. In fact, she became even more self-absorbed, as if she were the main character in some grand story where I was just a supporting role, someone who existed to serve her, not to be loved by her. She began acting like she deserved better, like she was settling by being with me. And honestly, that hurt. I watched the woman I had once loved slip further and further away because she had convinced herself she could do better than me. Loving someone who doesn't value you messes with your head. You start questioning yourself, wondering if maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm the problem. I spent so many nights staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what changed. What did I do wrong? When did I stop being enough for her? But deep down, I already knew the truth. And no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't save someone who didn't want to be saved. I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend everything was okay. Then came the night that changed everything. I had been waiting for hours, staring at the clock, listening to the sound of passing cars. It wasn't the first time Sophie had come home late, but something about this night felt different. When I finally heard the door open, I exhaled, steadying my emotions. I was too drained for another argument. She stumbled inside, and the strong scent of alcohol hit me before I even turned to look at her. She barely acknowledged me, tossing her bag onto the couch and kicking off her shoes. I swallowed my frustration. "Sophie, do you even realize what you're doing?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "This isn't just about coming home late. You're pushing me away. I've been patient, but you're not acting like a married woman anymore." She rolled her eyes, as if I had said something utterly ridiculous. Then, with a lazy smirk, she laughed. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You think I need you? Do you really think you're that special? Plenty of men want me. If you leave, I'll replace you the next day." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let it show. She wasn't finished. Straightening up, she said, "I'm done living by your rules. I'm done living by anyone's rules. This is my life, and neither you nor society is going to tell me how to live it. I'm in my baby girl era now, Lucas. Either deal with it or don't." That was it. That was the moment I knew I had lost her. Or maybe she had lost me. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't beg her to see reason. What was the point? She had already decided who she wanted to be, and that wasn't the woman I had married. So I did the only thing left to do. I let her have the life she wanted, and I walked away. The next morning, I called the best divorce lawyer in town. I didn't want a drawn-out battle. I just wanted a clean break. The legal process moved quickly since we had no children, and I wasn't about to fight over furniture or bank accounts. I didn't care about what was fair or unfair. I just wanted out. I didn't even show up for the final meeting. I let my lawyer handle everything, and once the papers were signed, I did exactly what I had promised myself. I disappeared. No calls, no texts, no emotional messages. I was just gone. At first, she didn't seem to care. If anything, she looked relieved, convincing herself this was her fresh start, her chance to finally be free. I saw glimpses of it on social media. Pictures of her out with friends, drinks in hand, living it up like she was celebrating a victory. Her posts were filled with captions about new beginnings and knowing your worth. For a while, it seemed like she had moved on without a second thought. She jumped back into the dating scene almost immediately. And of course, plenty of men were eager to entertain her. But something was different. She wasn't the prize she thought she was. The men chasing after her weren't looking for commitment, just a good time. And the ones who did want something serious, they weren't the type of men she desired. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand, but I heard things. She cycled through relationships quickly, jumping from one guy to the next, never finding anything that lasted. One by one, they all left. The attention she once craved now felt hollow and meaningless. And for the first time, she was truly alone. Not by choice, not for self-discovery, but because she had pushed away the one person who actually loved her. And as for me, I wasn't looking back. I could have lost myself in fleeting affairs, pointless diversions, and momentary thrills, but I knew that wasn't the solution. It wasn't what I truly desired. I had already spent too much time fading into the background of a marriage where I felt invisible. Now, it was time to prioritize myself. So I did. I immersed myself in my business, using it as a means of reconstruction. I poured my energy into strengthening what I had built from the ground up, expanding its reach, and solidifying its foundation. Work transformed from a mere obligation into a testament to my capabilities, a reminder that I had value beyond being someone's spouse. Gradually, the results became evident. My business flourished in ways I had never anticipated, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had regained control over my own life. Simultaneously, I concentrated on my well-being, both physically and mentally. I committed to the gym because I wanted to feel strong again. I became mindful of my diet, improved my sleep, and started caring for myself in ways I had long neglected. I came to terms with a harsh reality. Some people will never value you, no matter how much you give. I refused to settle for anything that failed to add genuine worth to my life. I wasn't about to let loneliness deceive me into running back to to what was once familiar, or into pursuing relationships that weren't meant for me. I learned to embrace solitude without feeling lonely, to find peace in my own company, something I hadn't experienced in years. Slowly, I thrived, and that, more than anything, became my greatest victory. It had been years since I last saw Sophie. That day, I was simply out running errands, picking up a few things from a department store when fate intervened. I turned a corner, and there she was, Sophie, standing just a few feet away, clutching a shopping bag, her eyes widening as if she had seen a ghost. For a brief moment, I barely recognized her. She still looked good. She had always taken pride in her appearance. Her gaze scanned me before she finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Lucas." I gave a polite nod, offering a reserved smile. "Hey, Sophie. It's been a while." She let out a nervous laugh, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Wow, you look different." I shrugged. "Yeah, life's been good." She started asking questions, trying to sustain the conversation. "How have you been? What have you been up to?" I responded casually, never giving away too much, keeping it light. I wasn't rude, but I also wasn't giving her the reaction she was hoping for. I had no idea what was running through her mind. After a few more minutes of small talk, she smiled uncertain. "Maybe we could catch up sometime." I returned the smile. "Yeah, maybe." But deep down, I knew we wouldn't. That chapter of my life was closed. Days later, she reached out. It started with a simple message, one of those casual, "Hey, it was nice seeing you the other day" texts. I hesitated before responding, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Against my better judgment, I replied. From there, the conversation slowly picked up. Nothing profound, nothing emotional, just idle chatter, filling the void where resentment and anger had once resided. Nostalgia crept in, making the past seem softer than it had been. Over the next few weeks, we exchanged occasional messages. She would send something random, a memory, a joke, something that reminded her of me. And despite everything, I couldn't deny it. The feelings were still there. You don't just stop loving someone overnight. But I came to understand something crucial. Love alone isn't enough. Trust once shattered doesn't mend easily. One evening, she suggested we meet, just dinner, just a conversation. A part of me wanted to say yes. I won't lie, I was tempted. But then I paused and asked myself the question I had been avoiding all along. What was the point? Was I seeking an apology, an explanation, a chance to salvage something irreparably broken? No. Deep down, I already knew the truth. I didn't need her to give me closure. I needed to grant it to myself. So, I declined, not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but with a simple, I don't think that's a good idea. It took me a long time to admit that I was damaged. I didn't want to acknowledge it. But Sophie had hurt me more than I had realized, not just by leaving, but by the way she had made me feel before she did. Unworthy, replaceable, as if I was never enough. At first, I convinced myself I was fine. I threw myself into work, hit the gym harder, surrounded myself with friends. But no matter how much I distracted myself, there was a weight in my chest that refused to lift. I knew that if I didn't confront it, it would follow me into every corner of my life. So, I did something I never thought I would. I went to therapy. I won't lie. At first, it felt strange, sitting there, confiding in a stranger about things I had buried for years. But session by session, I gained clarity. I wasn't foolish for loving Sophie. I wasn't weak for trying to salvage my marriage. I was simply a man who had given his heart to the wrong person. And that wasn't my failure. It was a lesson I needed to learn. Healing wasn't instant. It wasn't about waking up one day and suddenly feeling free. It was about the small moments. So, I burned every bridge with Sophie. No more texts. No more small talk. No more what-ifs. Before I deleted her number, I sent one last message. Not out of resentment, not out of vengeance, just honesty. I wish you the best. Looking back, I used to think the only way to move on from someone who hurt you was to get even, to prove to them that they lost something valuable. But along the way, I learned something important. Revenge is a waste of energy. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply moving on, evolving into the best version of yourself, and letting them watch from afar. And that, my friends, is exactly what I did.